We're going to look at how we can use the BlueLink Financial Reporter to create financial reports that potentially could look quite as dressed up and fancy as this and be functional in terms of being able to make selection changes. For example, in this 3-month rolling and year-to-date plus last year-to-date P&L, I can change the selected month and the changes roll through the entire statement. I can do the same thing with the year, and the entire statement will change to reflect 2018 with the last year being 2017. So we're going to look at some basic skills that allow you to create a format from which you could then use your Excel techniques and knowledge to dress it up cosmetically and make it look just like this. So let's start with a blank workbook, and let's take a look at the ribbon. You'll notice that once the add-in has been appropriately installed, you have an extra option on your ribbon menu called BlueLink. And when you click on the BlueLink ribbon, you'll get 4 icons. And as long as you have at least one company already set up, there's a separate tutorial on how to do that, how to set up companies. You'll be able to go ahead and start a report by clicking in the top left-hand corner of the area where you want to create your report. I'm going to make it A1, and click on the Insert Report button. And as you'll notice, up pops the screen, which allows you to fill out simple information from which we will create an initial starting point of our report. You can select from the list of companies that have been set up. You'll notice that I have 2 companies set up here. I'll choose International Corporation. And then, for the most part, you will simply accept the defaults. I will explain a little bit later in the tutorial how you may want to override some of these. But initially, you're just going to accept all the defaults, and you're simply going to click Create. Now, if you haven't refreshed the data recently, you might get a pop-up question saying, do you want to refresh the data before doing this? In which case, I would recommend answering yes. And after a little while, the wizard creates an initial starting report for us, as you can see, and then the pop-up screen disappears. The contents of cell F8, as you can see, are actually a formula. And this is a custom formula that's been added by the BlueLink add-on to Excel that renders information from the general ledger of the company that we're pointing to into the cell based on the selection criteria or the criteria or parameters that you'll see in the leftmost 4 columns as well as in these top rows. So essentially what it's doing is it's saying, give me all the information, sum up all of the general ledger accounts that match this particular pattern, the departments that match this pattern, job codes and cost codes that match these patterns for this particular company, for this fiscal year, for a month, a fiscal month or fiscal period, and it's period number 1 in the fiscal year. That's really what this means. And obviously, because I'm including as a wild card the asterisk, which means everything, I'm including all accounts, therefore the balance should be 0 because our trial balance should always net out to 0. Now I happen to know that all of my revenue accounts begin with the number 4 and all my cost of goods sold accounts begin with a 5. So I'm going to start modifying this. I'm going to double click here and I'm simply going to edit this to say 4 asterisk, which means give me all GL accounts that begin with a 4 no matter what the rest of the account code is, as well as still leaving all departments, all job codes, and all cost codes. And you'll notice immediately I get a different value. The value here is the sum of all the accounts that meet this criteria. Now, simply using Excel skills, I'm going to take that information, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it maybe a couple of rows down. And you'll see momentarily why I'm doing this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the second line and make that start with a 5, which will give me all my accounts that begin with a 5, namely my cost of goods sold accounts. I'm also going to do 2 other things. I'm going to widen this column and I'm going to change these labels. I'm going to call this sales and I'm going to call this cost of sales. And then I can put in, now this is not using BlueLink financial report writing capabilities, but simply Excel capabilities. I'm going to say equals that minus that. Now there's a flaw in this. Because credit balances show as a negative, this is showing as a negative. I think I'll widen that column as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a basic Excel skill to reverse the sign of my sales. So you'll typically, for revenue accounts and for liability and owner equity accounts on balance sheets, you will typically use this technique of reversing the sign. All you do is you edit the BLFS formula and place a minus sign in front of it. That reverses the sign. Now we have something that looks like a reasonable financial statement in terms of sales, cost of sales, gross margin, just for 1 month, but we can take this now a step further. We can take our cost of sales line, We can copy it to the clipboard again and paste it down here. Change the number to 6 because I know that my expenses all begin with a 6. Change the label to expenses. And then once again, I can go ahead and create a net income column. And I can say it equals gross margin minus expenses. Whoops, there we go. Now I have a nice little profit and loss statement for a single period, for a single month. Next thing we want to do is build this out and maybe do, months 1, 2, and 3, and then maybe take a year-to-date subtotal or something like that. Let's take column F and let's copy it across maybe 3 times, something like this. Now you'll notice what Excel did for me is it actually very conveniently incremented the fiscal month for me, meaning I've actually got month 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. Sometimes, depending on circumstances, it may do the same with your year. So you may need to pay special attention to the year, because otherwise you could get 2020, 2021, 2022 here. And if that's in the future, I wonder why you have all zeros down there. And that would be the reason why you'd have all zeros down there. But very quickly now, we've created a 4-column report. Now let's just say we weren't really that interested in month 4. We were mostly interested in getting a year-to-date number here. I can change this to, and that's going to be year-to-date through 3 periods. I can change this to a 3, change this to a Y, and that's going to give me my year-to-date numbers. Now in the user guide, it tells you how to use M's and Y's for year-to-date and B's in balance sheets for beginning balances. So I'm not going to go into that in this particular tutorial, but be aware that you can manipulate what kind of data is shown in these columns by using M, Y, or B. They all have to be uppercase, and by obviously specifying the period. I'm going to add one more column here. I'm going to grab that column. I'm going to copy it. So Control-C, by the way, is the keyboard shortcut. Click on that column and do Control-V to paste that in there. And I'm simply going to change this to 2018 so that we can see the previous year to date as well. And we can use a little bit of Excel formatting to dress this up and make it look a little prettier, which I'm going to do, and then show you and there we have it. Now this is our first little financial report, profit and loss, 3 periods as well as year-to-date and previous year-to-date. In the more advanced tutorial, I'm going to develop on this particular statement and show you some more advanced tools, techniques, and tips, as well as how to use drill downs. That's the end of the basic tutorial. Thank you.